Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Roman, the true football fan, back again once more with you guys today with my NFL team previews for the 2014-2015 NFL season with the Detroit Lions. Now, the Detroit Lions finished 7-9 last season, a pretty disappointing season. Not what they were hoping for. They were hoping for bigger wins and less losses. But that obviously didn't pan out. And versus the NFC North, they went 4-2, and versus the NFC, they went 6-6. So they went 500 against their conference. They did really well against their division, but it just didn't work out in the end, which is crazy. They got 6 of their wins against their conference and 1 win in the AFC. So it's crazy. They're not very good against the AFC, but against the NFC, they go 500, which is not bad and it's not good. It's right in the middle. So last year, the Detroit Lions finished third in passing, which should be a no-brainer. You've got the best receiver in football, Calvin Johnson, over there at number 1 for the wide receiver position. And they finished with 280 passing yards per game. Great numbers. That's a great numbers for a quarterback that's only been in the league for about 5 years now. So Matthew Stafford putting up 280 passing yards per game with Calvin Johnson, and he really didn't have a second receiver last season because Nate Burleson broke his arm in a fatal car accident, and he was gone for many weeks. He came back and didn't produce as well, and Calvin Johnson was pretty much the only one there. Reggie Bush caught some passes out of the backfield, but other than that, tossing for 280 yards a game is great. The tight ends caught. They either caught a touchdown or they got a catch for a big gain, and that was really just about it. They never got a catch and they ran. It was just more of a catch and down or a catch deep downfield and down or a touchdown. So there wasn't much going on there, but still 280 passing yards per game. With the big three I would consider for Detroit, Matthew Stafford, Reggie Bush, and Calvin Johnson are spectacular numbers, and that's a bright future ahead. Rushing yards per game, they finished 17th with 112 rushing yards per game. Now, this is right around the middle of the pack, but they obviously want higher numbers from someone like Reggie Bush and Joique Bell. Reggie Bush was fairly injured last season on and off, but Joique Bell came in and he carried a heavy load and he played very, very well for the Detroit Lions. For Joique Bell to come in as a backup and to take over for Reggie Bush once Reggie Bush has been injured is stellar. And it's got the Detroit Lions, GMs, and fans' eyes dwindling with stars because to have a running back that can back up your main running back, Reggie Bush, is great. If you can have a dual threat at the running back position, that's phenomenal. And they've got to be thinking happy things. But having 112 rushing yards per game, like I said, the middle of the pack, it's not very good and it's not very bad. So if they could get those numbers a little bit higher to maybe 125 to 130 rushing yards per game, we could see the Lions scoring more and, winning more games. So opponent passing yards per game, this is where the Lions falter heavily because they were 23rd in the league, the bottom half of the league, with 246 passing yards allowed per game. So although they're throwing for 280, they're also allowing 240. So these numbers are not very good for them to have on a defense. They never really had any coverage on any receivers. The receivers would jump up, grab the ball, run for a touchdown. Jump up, grab the ball, run for a touchdown. Catch over the middle, run for a few yards, get tackled by like 2 players. So for them, that had to be frustrating. The fact that they can throw for 280, but they allow 240 is disappointing. And that's what they want to attack. They want to attack the defensive side of the ball. And in the offseason, and they kind of did that. They kind of went more offensive, which surprised me. But I'll get to that a little bit later. So finishing 23rd last season is not very good for Detroit. And the fact that they didn't really address it in the offseason, that's an issue. So moving to opponent rushing yards per games, this is great. There were 6 in opponent rushing yards per game with 99.8, held them just under 100 rushing yards per game. And that's great. You've got Ndamukong Suh, you've got Nick Fairley, you've got great defenders who can blitz and can stop the run, and it's stellar. It's stellar. We've all seen them play, and they do phenomenal at stopping the run. They never really break tackles. They never go for long gains, and if they do, it's only on a rare occasion. It's not constantly 100 or like a 10-yard run, a 10-yard run, or a 10-yard run. It'll probably be a 3-yard run, a 2-yard run, and then a 10-yard run, or 3 yards. And for them to stop the opponent's rushing is great. But if they could just stop the passing and they could rush for more yards, the Lions could be looking at the playoffs every season. But then comes in the offseason, which has me thinking, what the heck are you doing? And why you would do this and why you wouldn't address your issues. And you have a chance to win your division with the Bears always choking towards the end of the season, and the Packers kind of just on and off every once in a while. When Aaron Rodgers is healthy, they're phenomenal. And then the Vikings are not playing very good. They completely cleaned house over there in Minnesota. For the Detroit Lions, they have an opportunity here to take advantage of their division, but they can never do it. It always comes down to coaching for them, but it always comes down to injuries as well. It always comes down to how many pass yards they're allowing per game. By allowing 240 pass yards per game, by allowing so-and-so touchdowns, by allowing insert number here passing yards, it's like it's a big downfall. And that's the reason why I think the Detroit Lions are being prevented from going for the playoffs is their defense, their rushing yards allowed, and their coaching. They've just had some very poor coaching with Jim Schwartz the last few seasons. Their offensive coordinator hasn't been very good. And Matthew Stafford, I believe, although he's a top 10 QB, has not taken the initiative to become the guy to call the plays or to call audibles constantly into like a Peyton Manning, like Omaha, or to really see what the defense is bringing to help his team. I mean, they're 17th in rushing. If he audibled more, if he realized what the defense was bringing more often, maybe change the play up more, then maybe they could start winning some more games. But it all comes down to coaching. And what the Lions did is they went out and fired Jim Schwartz after the season. They finished 7-9, another disappointing season. Although they went to the playoffs one year at 10-6 and then lost to the Saints in the first round. But what they did is they brought in former head coach of the Indianapolis Colts for 3 seasons back in, I believe, I want to say 2008, 2009, but they brought in Jim Caldwell, and he's the former offensive coordinator for the Ravens. He was only there for a season, and we all saw how that turned out. Joe Flacco had a down year. He didn't play very well. He's very inconsistent, and for them to bring him in was, I think, it was a good decision. You needed a coach, but was he the right coach? I don't think so. I think there were plenty of other coaches out there, but Jim Caldwell, he's shown that he can win if he's got the right players and if he's got healthy players. We saw what he did when he first stepped in after Tony Dungy left, and they went 14-0. I mean, they went 14-2, but those 2 losses came from not playing the starters. Now, if the starters had played Peyton Manning and Reggie Wayne, they would have probably went 16-0. No doubt about it. But he sat those players for the last 2 games, but he came in and won 14 straight games. Eventually went on to go to the Super Bowl. One of the first, I believe he was the first rookie head coach to go to coach a team to the Super Bowl. But they eventually lost 31-17 to the New Orleans Saints, as we all saw that pan out. So he's a very good coach, but I don't think he's the right coach for this team. He was an offensive coordinator last season, and you've got a team 3rd in passing in the league, and Joe Flacco did not have a very good year. I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know how the playbook's going to work out. But that's what kind of changes my mind a little bit when they bring in a new offensive coordinator. And they brought in Joe Lombardi. Now people are like, who are Joe Lombardi? Who's Joe Lombardi? He's the former quarterback coach for the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees' New Orleans Saints, yes, for 7 seasons. And we've all seen what Drew Brees has done there. Yeah, it's mainly Drew Brees' reason behind holding the record for most consecutive seasons of 3,000 passing yards. Back-to-back 5,000 passing yards in a season. But it all comes down to Joe Lombardi. Now, this is huge. If you're 3rd already, you can go higher. You can do better. You can be 1st in the league, no doubt about it. And what Joe Lombardi did with Drew Brees and the Saints, we've all seen it. Drew Brees is a beast. He's got the right plays, and he knows what play he's got. He recognizes what the defense is bringing. And he has the ability to distribute the ball to basically not superstar receivers, because let's all agree, he doesn't really have a superstar receiver besides Jimmy Graham, but he's a tight end. So what Joe Lombardi brings is huge for the Detroit Lions. And it's got me singing high praise right now for what they did with that pick. But what kind of trumps that is this Jim Caldwell coaching. Because it's going to be more of Joe Lombardi calling the offensive plays, unless they hand it over to Matthew Stafford, which I highly doubt. But it's the fact that after the 14-0 season, or after they started 14-0, and then they eventually went 14-2, he didn't do very well. Peyton Manning got hurt, and then they went 2-14, were the worst team in the league 2 seasons after that Super Bowl appearance, and then they were a middle of the pack team right after the Super Bowl appearance the season after, and I don't know if that's the right decision. If they want to win now, that's great. But they didn't take the right steps in the offseason with free agents. They didn't do the right things in the draft. And it's like, I don't understand. You need help down deep. But let's kind of go into what they did for free agency and draft. So their first pick in the draft, and we all expected them to pick a defender. You could have traded up and gotten Justin Gilbert, drafted Darqueze Dennard, Jason Verrett, Kyle Fuller. You had opportunities here. You had plenty of players to pick. Clinton Dix, because he wasn't off the board yet until he went 21st in the Packers. And what they went with kind of blew my mind. They went with tight end Eric Ebron, who out of UNC. I was like, why? Now they kind of do need a tight end, and I understand the reasoning behind that. But you have other issues to attend first. So you're already third in passing. What do you need another tight end for? Brandon Pettigrew and I forget the tight end's name, but he only caught touchdowns basically. He never had loads of yards. He just caught touchdowns. But why just Eric Ebron? Why didn't you go for a Clinton Dix? Why didn't you go for Kyle Fuller? Why didn't you trade up for Justin Gilbert? I believe Justin Gilbert went 1 pick ahead. So why? Why a tight end? You had plenty of other opportunities to grab one of the better defensive players in the draft, and you go with a tight end. Now they signed him to a 4-year contract, so they really like this kid. And Eric Ebron came out and said, I believe a few days ago, he said, it's just I'm putting out a lot of work out there right now. I'm working really hard, and it's exhausting. So it kind of shows like there's a little bit of downfall in this kid. I hope that changes. But I don't understand why they didn't go for a safety or a corner. It's just kind of like, why? I don't understand. But they do need a tight end, and they went out and grabbed the best one in the draft. Then with their next pick in the second round, they did go out and grab a linebacker, a defensive player. They drafted Kyle Van Noy out of BYU, and he was the 40th pick in the draft, and they signed him to a 4-year contract as well. Kyle Van Noy was one of those linebackers that was really high in the draft for a little bit, and then he kind of went down a little bit. But Kyle Van Noy, he's going to do fine for the Detroit Lions. I think a defensive player in the second, a safety or a corner would have been great, but I don't understand why they didn't go for one. So that's got me questioning the Detroit Lions draft. I didn't really like it. It's not what they needed. And those are the 2 picks that stood out in my eyes. And there was the first 2 picks in the draft for them. And it's just very questionable. But what they did in free agency, they re-signed Dominic Raiola for a 1-year deal, center. They re-signed Joique Bell for a 3-year contract, running back that backs up Reggie Bush. And this is huge because Joique Bell is very good backup. He's a very good backup running back, and when he starts, he's a star for that team specifically. So Joique Bell coming in for another 3 years, basically, unless they trade him, it's great because Reggie Bush, he's not always healthy, and to have someone that's at least above average or average is great to have. And Joique Bell he's always shined when I've seen him play. So having him back up Reggie Bush and possibly becoming a starter once Reggie Bush retires on this 3-year contract, I think that's huge for them. Then they re-signed tight end Brandon Pettigrew for a 4-year contract. So this is kind of like, what are you doing? You do need 2 tight ends. There's no doubt about it. Because if one gets injured, you need to bring another one in. But do you want a rookie to come in after you're a player that's more used to the offense? Brandon Pettigrew, he's never really that great. He's more in the bottom half of the league for tight ends. But he shows up when they need him to, and he catches a pass every once in a while. But a 4-year contract, I think that's a little bit too much. They could have spent it or traded him or done something. They needed a safety in a corner. I can't emphasize it enough. And then they went out and grabbed safety James Hedebo. Excuse me if I'm botching that last name. But this is a good pickup. But he's not very good. He's not the greatest. He's not a Troy Polamalu. He's not a Brandon Browner. He's not a super great safety. He's not an Earl Thomas. But, I mean, it's good enough. It's what they needed, and they went out and grabbed a safety, but I don't think it helps very well. He's going to be there. He's going to have a presence, but he's not going to be like the superstar safety that we all want him to be. Then they went out and signed cornerback Rashean Mathis for a 1-year contract. Rashean Mathis, he's getting up there in age. And this is kind of another question. Why didn't you go out and get a younger guy? Why didn't you go tackle a TJ Ward? Why didn't you go tackle a Darrelle Revis? I don't understand. It just doesn't make any sense. You could have got Aqib Talib. You had all these opportunities to grab great corners and safeties. And I think that was a missed opportunity for them. But their biggest move in the offseason was grabbing Super Bowl champion wide receiver Golden Tate on a 5-year contract. This is huge. They've always needed a second receiver. Nate Burleson was there, like I said, on a few games back and forth, but he was never consistent. He was always injured. And Golden Tate, while he's not the greatest receiver, he was there when Russell Wilson needed him to. And Russell Wilson's a great passer. Now to bring him over to an offense with Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson, I expect big things out of Golden Tate. And for them picking him up, that's great. Did they need to sign him to a 5-year contract? He's still quite young. And if they want to have a second receiver for a very long time, this is a great pickup. But I'm very excited to see what Golden Tate can do. I see him on the other end of the field. They got rid of Nate Burleson. They shopped him out. And I'm very excited to see Golden Tate. So their additions were okay. Their head coaching, I really don't like, but their offensive coordinator is a great pickup. Signing Golden Tate is huge. Re-signing Joique Bell was huge. And then grabbing Kyle Van Noy for that linebacking core was great as well. We'll see what he has to do. And then Erica Brown was a huge question for me. But for additions, they did okay. I didn't really like too much of them. But then you go to their losses, and they lose Nate Burleson. I already discussed that. Golden Tate comes in for him. Nate Burleson isn't even as good as Golden Tate. They lost safety Louis Delmas, a safety that they could have used. Yeah, he wasn't great because obviously they were 23rd in opponents' passing yards, but he was still a presence on the field. They lost defensive end Courtney Brown and defensive tackle Vaughn Martin on June 2nd, both in the same day. They lost 2 defensive linemen that could hurt their opponent's rushing yards allowed per game and not keep them at 6th or within the top 10. And then most recently they lost cornerback Chris Houston. Now Chris Houston, he's not a star, but he was a presence on the field for them, and I kind of question Chris Houston. Could have gone after Brandon Flowers, and I don't understand this whole cornerback and safety thing for them. It's a huge misstep for them. But let's go ahead and move on to the season and what I expect the Detroit Lions to go in the 2014-2015 NFL season. Week 1, they take on the Giants Monday night. First Monday night game of the season. Not a super crazy game. People aren't getting too hyped about it because the game of that night is the Chargers versus Cardinals, the game after. And I think they'll pull out the win at home against the Giants. Week 2, they go play Carolina, and they take a loss there. I think Carolina's way too good at home. They come back and play the Packers. I think they get a win here. Week 4, they play the Jets. This is going to be a loss here at New York. I think New York is a lot better than people think. I'm not giving them the credit they do, and I think New York is going to surprise a lot of people. Week 5, they play the Bills. I think they'll grab a win here. Week 6, they play at Minnesota. They're going to lose here. Week 7, they stay at home and play New Orleans, but I don't think there's an opportunity. They can beat New Orleans, but I don't think they're going to. Week 8, early Sunday, 9:30 a.m. And why is it 9:30 a.m. on the East Coast when this game starts? Because it's played in London, and I live on the West Coast over here, and that game starts at 7:30 in the morning. So to wake up at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning to go ahead and watch some football as soon as I wake up, that's awesome. We're watching football from 7 a.m. to like 10 at night. I'm super pumped for Week 8. But they go play in London, obviously, but they're the away team. They're at Atlanta. So I think they grab a win here. Then they go into the bye week, Week 9. Week 10 after the bye week. They're never really good after the bye week. They take a loss at home against the Dolphins. Week 11, they go at Arizona. They always lose at Arizona for some reason. I think Arizona spanks them here handily. Week 12, they go at New England. This is going to be a loss here. New England's way too good at home. Week 13 is Thanksgiving, and they play the Bears. I think they get a win here. The Detroit Lions have played fairly well on Thanksgiving the last few seasons. Week 14, they face Tampa Bay. This is a big game on my radar. but I think the Bucks are going to take the Lions are going to take the win at home against the Buccaneers. And then Week 15 at home against the Vikings, I think they grab a win there against their division rival. Week 16, they go back to Chicago. I think they lose here. And then Week 17, they go back to Green Bay, and I think they lose here as well. And that brings their season total to 9-7, an improvement upon last season, and that makes them tied up with the Green Bay Packers for the second spot in the NFC North. This makes them go 3-3 in their division, but third in the NFC North. But I have to go ahead and make my next video for the Minnesota Vikings. Go ahead and like the video if you liked the video. Turn that gray like button green. If you completely hated the video, go ahead and hit that dislike button. That is your opinion, not mine. Leave down in the comments below what you think the Detroit Lions record will be this season. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, it's your opinion, not mine. I think they go 9-7 and miss the playoffs, but you can go ahead and give your opinion if you want them to go 16-0. Go ahead and put it down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because I have done a lot of videos recently regarding my team previews for the NFL. I'm starting with the NFC North, and then I'm going to go to the AFC North, the NFC East, and the AFC East. I'm going to alternate between conferences for each team in the NFL, all 32 teams. I'm 3 teams through right now. I have 29 to go. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button, make sure you do so you can keep updated with my opinions on the NFL team previews and to get you more involved. And go ahead and hit that share button and get the word around to get people to look at my videos, and so I can hear their opinions as well. There are a lot of people out there with opinions on football, and I'm just one of them. This is Roman, the true football fan. I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great day.